Those without power cannot defend freedom.
Don't you love it when the government does your work for you? You know, whenever they say, well, constitutionalists are anti-government, aren't they telling us, admitting that the government is anti-constitution?
It is now impossible, or soon will be impossible, to leave this country or to return to this country without an RFID tagged ID document.
I think I can speak for Karen when I say that what makes both of us tick is our undying passion to save our country by taking elections back into the hands of the people, because electronic voting machines are stealing our elections. When you look around and you see our so-called elected officials totally disregarding the will of the people and totally violating the Constitution at every step, you would think that they thought we couldn't vote them out. Well, that is what they think.
My fellow Americans, this evening I come to you with a message of leave-taking and farewell, and to share a few final thoughts with you, my countrymen. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists.
According to some estimates, we cannot track $2.3 trillion in transactions.
2.3 trillion with a T. That's $8,000 for every man, woman, and child in America.
The terrorists attacked us and killed 3,000 of our citizens before we started the freedom agenda in the Middle East. They were... What did Iraq have to do with what?
The attack on the World Trade Center.
Nothing.
Saddam Hussein aids and protects terrorists, including members of Al-Qaeda. Secretly and without fingerprints, he could provide one of his hidden weapons to terrorists or help them develop their own.
Listen to this. Over the weekend, before leaving town for a month-long vacation, the democratically controlled Congress handed President Bush exactly what he wanted, more than he asked for even. Legislation that broadly expands the administration's power to eavesdrop without warrants on Americans' international phone calls and emails. So it's not a discussion in the abstract, it's not hypothetical. There are laws on the books against what the administration is doing.
For on this first full day that the Military Commissions Act is in force, we now face what our ancestors faced at other times of exaggerated crisis and melodramatic fear-mongering. A government more dangerous to our liberty than is the enemy it claims to protect us from.
Those weapons of mass destruction got to be somewhere.
Alex, I want to read what David Brooks wrote in the New York Times today. He's just gotten back from the area. He wrote, quote, President Obama is doubling down on the very principles that some dismiss as neocon fantasy. The idea that this nation has the capacity to use military and civilian power to promote democracy, nurture civil society, and rebuild failed states.
This is a hugely ambitious plan. 22,000 more troops. You're going to increase spending by 60%. You said in your announcement, we must defeat Al-Qaeda.
Right.
This has really now become your war, hasn't it?
I think it's America's war.
The damage caused by default by Bear Stearns could have been severe and extremely difficult to contain. Moreover, and very importantly, the adverse impact of the default would not have been confined to the financial system, but would have been felt broadly in the real economy.
First of all, do you really believe we're headed toward economic collapse?
I do. I think everything that I forecast in my book that I wrote over 2 years ago, came out last year, is happening right now, and it's going to get a lot worse.
But who's responsible for this? It's the Congress and the President who signed this. So this is a distraction. This is an outrage. So everybody can go home that voted for this bill and say, look, I am clamping down on this $165 million, but I don't care about the previous $5 trillion the Fed created and the $1.25 they created yesterday. Think of the loss in purchasing power in less than 24 hours.
Many of us were told in private conversations that if we voted against this bill on Monday, that the sky would fall, the market would drop 2,000 or 3,000 points the first day, another couple thousand the second day, and a few members were even told that there would be martial law in America if we voted no. That's what I call fear-mongering.
We don't read most of the bills. Do you really know what that would entail if we were to read every bill that we pass?
And we think that we can solve this problem. We first appropriate unconstitutionally $350 billion. We give it to the Treasury. We have no strings attached. And then you have an unintended consequence, so we express this outrage. And at the same time, what do? We come along and we now propose that we pass a bill of attainder. So we do things unconstitutional. They have an unintended consequence. So what is our solution? To further undermine the Constitution. The line should be drawn in the sand.
That's what's happening now with the states declaring sovereignty, the people waking up. We're in the process of being reasonable, saying, look, Madoff people are stealing everything. You've taken the pension funds and given them to derivatives. The government stole the government pension funds. Boston Globe today. Look, you're criminals. You need to stop. You need to stop.
When the people are up against unjust and uncivil government and laws, and they are entitled to reform as we are, they'll get it only if they follow a three-part formula. He said if you're missing any one of the three parts, you're going to fail. You need to be proactive, nonviolent, and you need a mass movement. You need a critical mass. Proactive, nonviolent, mass movement. And so we've exhausted this foundation with the assistance of tens of thousands of people across the country for 10 years. We have established a solid record of petitioning, identifying with facts these violations of all of these provisions of the Constitution, whether it's the war powers clauses, the money clauses, the tax clauses, the privacy clauses, and so forth. We have laid out, with the assistance of constitutional scholars like Ed Vieira and Walker Todd and others, we've documented these violations, and we have petitioned the government under the First Amendment, last 10 words, the petition clause, the accountability clause. The founders put those 10 words there, knowing that this day would come, knowing that people in government will have a natural tendency to step outside the boundaries that we, the people, have drawn around their power. And so they have given us, right there in the document, the last 10 words is the accountability clause, the right to petition for redress of grievances, and under those the meaning of those last 10 words is if we have some evidence that government has violated the Constitution, we can call them on it. We can petition for a remedy. They are obligated to respond. If they do not respond, then we have a government that in effect has turned its back on the Constitution. We've called them on it. The servant government, they refuse to respond, then we have the right to withdraw our money and our resources and our support from that government. But of course, as individuals and small groups, you can't prevail. So we need a mass movement. The solution here is to have a Continental Congress, as they did. They decided, all right, look, we're going to get together in Philadelphia. We're going to talk about these grievances and settle on some course of action. The Constitution does, as you know, it doesn't defend itself. It just lies on your desk. The government isn't going to defend it. The Constitution's going to be defended only if the people defend it.
Let's quit appropriating funds in an unconstitutional manner. Let's quit bankrupting this country. Let's quit destroying our dollar.
There will be a Continental Congress again this year. A lot of work to be done there. We have all of these violations of the Constitution that are escalating. We have a rogue government. People need to get together and talk about that. Right now at Jekyll Island, it's to demonstrate that there's a coalition building in America, a coalition of all of our liberty, freedom-oriented, Constitution-based organizations are beginning to come together, recognizing that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. We're going to honor America. We're going to honor the Constitution. With God's help, we're going to do well.